Hopefully everyone is nice and comfortable at home. I want to introduce myself. My name is Lena Kushner. I have the honor and privilege of serving this community and this school as the head of school. I believe deeply in our mission and everything that we do each day. I am a Schechter alum. I'm married to a Schechter alum. I have two children who are Schechter alum. And I started my teaching career at Schechter about 25 years ago as a third grade teacher. And I've held many roles since then, from teacher to curriculum coordinator to principal. And I'm in my 5th year as head of school. And I couldn't be happier than to be leading this school and to see the magic that happens every day. And I often say that I could talk about Schechter for hours. I'm not going to do that this evening. I'm going to try to give you an overview of the Schechter experience. And I will begin with a presentation for a bit of time, and then you're going to have the chance to hear from 2 current Schechter parents. And I think that'll be really valuable. They each came to the Schechter community quite differently. So you'll hear about their journey to Schechter and why they continue to stay at Schechter. And then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end, and then talk about next steps, because I hope that all of you will come to tour the school. If you haven't toured yet, there's nothing quite like being in our building, seeing what is happening every single day with our students and our exemplary faculty. So I want to jump right in, and I want to focus on the question of why Schechter. We know that you have a choice for where your children go to school, for where you choose to be a part of a community. And I want to talk about some of the core reasons why people choose Schechter. Why Schechter? And I'm going to frame my presentation this evening around 4 key reasons. The first is our warm and nurturing environment. And there are many ways that I'll be able to highlight that is who we are and something that's very important to us. Our academic rigor. We have a robust dual curriculum, and we focus a lot of attention and energy on making sure that we are challenging our students. I want to talk about Jewish identity. We are a Jewish day school. That is a big reason why people choose Schechter, to help develop a strong sense of self within a Jewish framework. And lastly, our focus on strong values and character, which is something that is also very important to us. We are definitely about more than just the academic experience. So before I jump into these 4 areas, I actually want to start with what I think is the best answer to the question, why Schechter? And that's really our alumni, our successful and our proud alumni. Here's a picture of students who are either freshmen in college this year or on gap year programs. And I want to share with you, I'm not going to read this slide to you, but I think this is a really important starting point, which is, where are our kids now? Where are our alumni? And currently, right now, our students, our alumni are attending these colleges and universities. And if you take a look at this list, I think you'll agree that it's a very diverse list and it's a very impressive list. Of course, we have multiple students at many of these institutions, but I just wanted to paint the picture that when our students leave us in high school, whether they're going to public high school or going on to Rochelle Zell Jewish High School, they thrive in their high school setting, and they go on to thrive in their college environment. And these kids are actively engaged on campus. They're actively engaged in Jewish life. They're actively engaged in social action and leadership opportunities. So our alumni make us proud, and for me, reinforce that the foundation that we built for them way back when was a strong foundation, because they used that to build their lives off of. We also share here some of the Gap Year in Israel programs that our students are currently attending. Many of our alumni choose to spend a year in Israel after high school. Not all of them do, but several do. And some even go to Israel for their entire college experience. So I wanted to just begin with that portrait, because I think it is a really important one. And I want to jump in now to these 4 frameworks that I mentioned. And I want to begin with this idea of a warm and nurturing environment. Our students are greeted every single morning in several ways. First of all, actually, because of COVID, we greet our students at the car door. There's an administrator or a teacher right there. And that's probably going to be a COVID keeper. We started doing it because we needed to check the health app screeners, but it's such a wonderful thing to be able to greet students at the car, welcome them into the building. And when they come into the building, I'm standing at one of the doors. There are administrators at others' doors, greeting children by name, checking in with them, asking them how they're doing, asking them about their weekend activities, about their extracurricular activities. So before they even get to their classroom, they've been greeted. They know that they matter. They know that we know them, that we want to know them, that we care about them, what's important to them. And then a part of the morning experience that our students have every single day, whether they're in kindergarten or 8th grade, is they begin their day with about 20 minutes of what we call kahila time. It's really homeroom time. And that time actually begins with greeting each other by name. And the kids do this in a lot of different ways. And it may sound like a silly thing, but it's actually really important for every child to hear their name, to be greeted. I was walking the building today and I saw in a 1st grade classroom during kahila time, all of the students were standing up and they were in the middle of their greeting. So they had an imaginary ball in their hands and they would say good morning and they would say a student's name and throw the imaginary ball. That student would say good morning back with that student's name and then turn to another student. So this is a part of our ritual, really the opportunity to greet students each morning. You can see some of our pictures are pre-COVID pictures. Any picture without masks, is a pre-COVID picture. But they represent a lot of our core values. There are a lot of community building activities that happen, particularly in that kahila time where students have opportunities to share with each other. But that's something that happens throughout the course of the day and throughout the course of the year as well. Our teacher investment in our students is something that is just unbelievably remarkable, something that I am so proud of. And I want to share 2 anecdotes to demonstrate this idea that our teachers are really invested in our students above and beyond teaching them academics. Last year, one of our 4th grade teachers had a hesitant reader. He didn't love reading. He wasn't happy every time it was time to do reading. And this teacher was just determined to get this child engaged. And this particular student was really, really interested in cars, one particular type of car. And the teacher drove to the dealership and said, listen, I need everything you can give me about your car so that I can engage my student. And he came to school the next day and he gave all of these materials to the student. And the student was amazed that a teacher cared that much about him, that he went out to a car dealership and that student became a reader. And I think that the investment that the teacher showed was a big part of that motivation. And of course, he was interested in reading about the cars as well. And one other anecdote I'd like to share is an email I received last week from a parent of a new student, someone who came in, he came from public school. He's in 6th grade this year. He's brand new to us this year. And she sent me an email and she said, you have to hear about the exchange that my son had with his father. And she typed what the exchange was. And the exchange was something along the lines of, the child said, Dad, do you want to know what's special about Schechter? And he said, what's that? And the child said, I may not get everything right on my homework or my tests, but my teachers still really, really care about me. And I think that that's something special. Sadly, that was the first time he had really felt that way. He hadn't had that in his previous school experience, but he has it now in the care of our Schechter teachers. So I think that that warm and nurturing environment is so important. We also begin from a belief that kids do well if they can. So if kids are not doing well, whether that is academically, whether that is behaviorally, whether that is socially, we actually ask ourselves the question, what might be going on for this child? Are there lagging skills that the child doesn't have that we need to actually give them? We need to teach them. We need to scaffold for them. How can we set them up for success? So as opposed to a punitive nature because a child is not performing, we really look at how can we advocate for this child? How can we give them what they need so that they can be successful in whichever domain we're talking about, academics, behavioral, social, emotional. There is a tremendous investment in children and helping to shape who they are becoming. And we do that in a very warm and nurturing environment. I want to transition and talk a bit about our academic rigor, which is something that we take very seriously here at Schechter. Part of our mission statement is actually that we educate each child to their potential, to their highest potential. And that's something that we're thinking about whether they are in kindergarten or they are in 8th grade. We challenge our students and we want to make sure that we are helping them reach their highest potential, recognizing that that means something different for each and every child. And I want to talk about a few different things in terms of academic rigor. I first, whoops, hold on, I skipped a slide. Here we go. I want to just take a moment to toot our horn, so to speak, for just a minute, which is that we are actually nationally recognized as a school of excellence. We received the National Blue Ribbon Award in 2016. And this recognition places us in the top 15% of schools nationally in both independent and public schools. In order to even be looked at for this award, you have to have a certain level of performance on national standardized tests, which we had in order to apply for this award. And they did a full evaluation of our program, our academic program, our extracurricular program, our professional development program. And I'm very proud that we were able to receive the National Blue Ribbon Award. And the reason I share it with you now is I think it's great to know that there is an outside source whose expertise is in educational excellence, and that we have been recognized by that organization. I want to talk for a moment about our robust dual curriculum. I often hear from prospective families, how can you possibly teach everything you need to teach when the kids are not in general studies all day long? They just can't quite wrap their brain around it. And I want to share some of the details about our dual curriculum, but I want to open by saying, I believe strongly that our students thrive not in spite of the dual curriculum, but because of the dual curriculum. They are reading, writing, thinking in 2 languages. And there's a tremendous amount of integration across the content areas to make the very most of the educational experience. So our kindergarten students spend most of their day with their general studies teacher, and an hour a day, a Judaic studies teacher will come in. The focus is on oral language and comprehension, holiday celebrations, singing. And then in first grade, we begin what we call our 60-40 split. Students spend 60% of their day in general studies subjects, where we cover all of the secular subjects, and they spend 40% of their day in Judaic studies. That includes Hebrew language, that includes tefillot, prayers, that includes holidays, Parshat HaShavua, the Parsha of the week when they're younger, and as they get older, actually studying Bible. Our students are able to engage across these areas at tremendously high levels, and we measure their success. So we have standard assessments that we use for Hebrew language, and we, starting in second grade, measure our students' math skills and reading skills against national standards with a computer adaptive test called the MAP assessment. So our students are engaged in tremendous, rigorous work throughout the course of their education at Schecter. I want to put this up. I'm not going to read this whole chart to you, but I think that this is really interesting from DePaul about the benefits of being bilingual, of what it means for someone to really be able to engage in 2 languages. And you can see some of the benefits in terms of neuroscience. And I want to just share with you, this happens to be an essay that was written a couple of years ago, actually, by a 6th grade student. For those of you who can read Hebrew, you'll see that this is an essay about their summer trip that they took at Lake Tahoe and how much fun they had. And the reason I share this with you is just to show that our students really are engaging in the language in rigorous ways throughout their years. I want to also hit on something that I think is really important, which is that our focus is on higher level skills. We are not a school that is focused on memorization and regurgitation. We are not a school that is focused on covering curriculum and making sure that we get through it all. We are a school that is focused on making sure that kids understand what to do with what they learn. There certainly are foundational skills that our students need and learn, particularly in the areas of reading and math. And we give them those foundational skills in the youngest grades. And as soon as they are able, they are then engaged in content in a much higher way. I did a tour this week with a prospective family, and we were able to actually see a 1st grade science classroom, and then we made our way up to an 8th grade science classroom. And it was such a great example of what it means to engage kids at a higher level. The 1st graders are studying air. And they had little tubes and pumps, and they were experimenting with what happens with the air when you bend the tube, when you put your finger on the top of the tube. And the teacher wasn't telling them what was going to happen. The teacher wasn't giving them any answers. The teacher was asking them questions. What do you think is happening? Why do you think that is happening? What do you think would happen if we tried this? So already in first grade, they are being primed to be thinking critically. And then, of course, we went up to the 8th grade where they were doing a science experiment. It was a long-term experiment with eggs where they were soaking the eggs in different solutions, measuring the weight of the egg, figuring out what was happening. It was the same type of conversation. What did you notice? Why do you think that happened? What do you think might happen next? So students are making sense of their learning. They are uncovering and discovering versus the teacher just covering material and telling them the content and teaching them the content. I want to share 2 pictures that I love because I think they're also good examples of this higher level of thinking. On the left, we have a comparison of an etrog and a lemon. This was a brainstorming session, excuse me, with a kindergarten class where they had to examine, they had etrogim in the class and they had lemons in the class, and they had to look at them and smell them and touch them and use all of their senses and identify what is similar about these 2 objects. What is different about these 2 objects? So they are learning these skills of compare and contrast. They're learning what a Venn diagram is in the very youngest age. And of course, this is just a great example of easy integration of Jewish concepts into a general studies classroom. The other picture, again, you can see this is a pre-COVID picture. And I just happened to take this picture one day when I was walking through classrooms. These were 2, they were in first grade at the time of the picture. And they are explaining their mathematical thinking to their class. So what you can see here is obviously they were learning addition, and they were showing their class the many different strategies that they used to get the answer. You can even see that the student who's talking right now had a couple of reversed 4s, which is very developmentally appropriate. She wrote the equation backwards to show that it doesn't matter where the equal sign is, which is a mathematical concept. And she got the 4s reversed. She showed a pictorial representation, and the students are practicing. What does it mean to actually communicate their learning? How did you get your answer? Which strategy was the best for you? And they have the confidence to stand in front of their class and do all of this communicating about their learning. I could talk a lot more about that, but I'm going to keep things moving here. I want to talk about what we do at Schechter to really meet the needs, of diverse learners. And I will say that Schechter has come a tremendous way in the last 10 to 12 years in our ability to meet the needs of diverse learners. We've changed our schedules and our teaching structures. We have expanded our student support team to really make sure that the students who are part of the Schechter community are getting what they need. Our teachers are trained in how to differentiate instruction. We use pre-assessments to identify where students are, because there's no point in having a child sit through a curriculum that they've really already mastered the content. So we're able to identify, oh, the core curriculum is actually not appropriate for this child. They've already accessed this material, and we're able to pull them into small groups and provide advanced curriculum. We're also able to provide small groups for intervention. The core curriculum might actually not be within reach of a group of students. And because of our staffing structure and because of our schedule, we're able to pull students from different classes and give them exactly what they need. And we make the most of every minute with our students in the opportunity of having more teachers available, particularly in the content areas of math and reading in the youngest grades, so that we can make sure they're getting what they need. As the kids get older, those areas are leveled as necessary, as is Hebrew language. Starting in 2nd grade, once they've built some of those foundational skills, we actually do reading groups in 2nd grade in Hebrew, because we understand that some children have already mastered their fluency and they're ready to work on harder levels and more comprehension. And some students still need more practice on their fluency and maybe lower levels of comprehension. So we bring in those leveled groups whenever we feel that it's necessary. And we have a lot of resources available to meet students' needs. We also have a very diverse student services team. We have special education teachers, we have a school social worker, we have a school psychologist, we have an advanced learner coordinator. So we have a lot of staff, faculty and staff set up to both service students as well as to support our teachers in making sure that those needs are being met within the classroom. Another few pictures that I just love. Pre-COVID, obviously, these are first grade students who are just learning their Aleph Bet. So you can see they have Play-Doh, they have sand, they have paint, they're playing a memory game, different ways to engage children in their learning, because we know that that's what's going to be most effective for them to be able to learn and retain new skills and information. I want to share also something that's really exciting on the topic of academic rigor, and our current parent population doesn't actually know fully about this yet. So you're getting a bit of a preview. We'll be highlighting it soon, probably in a Shabbat bulletin. But we are going to be piloting a new program for our 7th and 8th graders this spring. And I want to just tell you a little bit about it. I'm unbelievably excited. We actually had a meeting with our 8th graders today. There was cheering in the room because they were so excited about what is about to happen. We are actually developing courses based on topics that students are interested in. We went through a long process of asking them in the spring, what's any topic you might be interested in learning about? And then we had them vote on their favorites, and we've been honing it down and honing it down and honing it down. Students are going to be able to choose which course they take. They're going to be integrated mini courses that are really created around real world issues and concepts that kids are interested in learning about. So every content is going to be represented somehow in these courses. And we are actually going to take 4 weeks, and students will be immersed in an intensive and student-directed learning activity. So the kids are shaping the topics of the courses. The kids are actually going to be working with us as the school leaders and a team of educational consultants to create the framework for the course and the projects for the course. And I'm really excited about it. I could go on and on about this one, but I just want to share with you 3 possible topics of courses that may happen. One is the history of superheroes. One is for the love of flavor. And one is extreme creatures. And we went through today 7, excuse me. We started with 9 topics for the teachers. It's down to 7 for the kids. We talked about some of the different areas that might possibly be covered underneath these topics, all based on what they were interested in. So for example, for the love of flavor, possibly doing some cooking together, thinking about our favorite meals, and really tracking, how did this food get to me? What needed to be grown? How was it grown? How did it get to the store? How was it prepared? All of the different elements that get to food. We'll be studying the science of taste. So there's so much here. And I want to just tell you that the kids were delighted that they are going to have some control over their learning. And I'm really excited to move this pilot program forward, and you'll hear more as it gets more fully developed. I want to transition into our next Schechter, and the development of Jewish identity, as I said, is clearly a reason that people choose to be at Schechter. And I want to put up, a few ideas here. There's so much that comes into what does it mean to develop Jewish identity for your children, for our students. First and foremost, we want them to have skills so that when they want to be engaged, they can be. They know the prayers. They know how to read from the Torah. They know the different traditions for the holidays. We want them to have the skills. Our Jewish values are woven into everything that we do. It's a part of the fabric of who we are, not just in Judaic studies classes, but across the board. We want our students to feel a responsibility to the community, not just the Jewish community, but starting with the Jewish community. And then beyond that, we want them to have joy. The best thing I can possibly see is when we have Likrat Shabbat and the kids are singing Shabbat songs and they are up dancing and singing, and they're just joyful. They just have joy being Jewish and having Judaism in their lives. We want them to develop a love of Israel, and we want them to want more. I want our graduates to receive their diploma and want more. And I want to pause here for a moment because it's important to note that that means something different for every student and for every family. We have a tremendously diverse Jewish community at Schechter. And I understand that some people actually believe that Schechter is really only for religious observant Jews. And I want to speak to that point. We do have religious observant Jews, and we welcome religious observant Jews. And we have families who identify everywhere from Orthodox all the way down to unaffiliated with a synagogue. We have people who are here who are in the beginning of their journey. We have people here who are really focused on their love of Israel. There's such diversity in what it means for people to engage with their Judaism. And what I want to say is that we are respectful of that full spectrum. We are not trying to change any family. We just want to give the skills and the love and the passion so that what you and your children want to be able to do within the Jewish community, we can enhance, we can offer those opportunities, and we respect that that's going to look different for everyone. I want to introduce Rabbi Josh Swarshawski. He couldn't be with us live this evening, but he was kind enough to make a very short video. Josh is an alum of the school. I was actually his third grade teacher, which makes me feel a little bit old, but that's okay. I'm so unbelievably proud of him and the work that he is doing. And I'm going to let Josh speak for 2 minutes about what he sees as the value of Jewish education.
I'm Rabbi Josh Swarshawski, Schechter graduate class of 2004, and the current rabbi in residence of the school. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about the value of sending your student to get a Schechter education, a Jewish education, how powerful that could be for you and for your child and for your family. Every time I walk into the building, the students are filled with life, are filled with excitement, and I get to talk to them about the amazing things about our tradition, our rituals, our faith, and we're creating a joy around Judaism. We're creating a love for our religion. We're creating a love for the questions that we ask, the kinds of ways that we celebrate, and the way that we walk in the world with meaning and intention. It's a really beautiful way to explore what life looks like and what it means to be a good person, to be a person who's living a life of meaning in this world. And we have a verse in Proverbs that says, "Chanoch lana'ar al pi darko, gam ki yazkin lo yasur mimena." Teach a child, educate a child according to their way, and even when they grow up, they will never divert from that path. And I think it's so important to start our children early in this rituals, in this bath of Jewish life, to expose them to what it means to be a Jew in the world, to expose them to our history, our traditions, our stories. All these stories teach what it means to live a life of value, to live a life of meaning. And the more that we can educate, the more that we can create excitement around this, the more that we can engage these students for a love of the Hebrew language, of culture, of community, and the more that they'll hopefully come back to that and engage with that throughout their lives. Many of my closest and dearest friends are friends I met when I was at Schechter, friends that I continue to celebrate Shabbat and holidays with. And the joy that I get from seeing a new generation, learning the songs that I learned when I was growing up, learning what it means to engage with Jewish life and engage in the world with Jewish lenses on, is a really powerful thing. So I encourage you to think about engaging with us and bring your children to Solomon Schechter.
So I want to thank Rabbi Josh, that's what the kids call him, for sharing a few words with us. And I want to hit on one more.
I'm Rabbi.
It started Josh again. Okay. I want to hit on our last category of why Schechter, and then you're going to hear from some of our current parents and we'll answer some of your questions. The last thing I want to talk about is just the emphasis on values and character. We care deeply about who your children will become as human beings, as mensches, as members of society. So we work really hard to have an excellent academic program. There is no question about that. But if we haven't shaped them in the framework of values and character, then we haven't done our job. We haven't lived our mission. So I want to speak to a few different pieces. I give announcements every morning. I say the dates, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we say the prayer for the state of Israel. And I end every day with a quote that was inspired by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. It's a little bit of an adjustment of his words to make it more kid-friendly. But what I say every day is that every action counts and every word has power. So choose actions and words that will make the world a better and kinder place. The kids hear this, they know it, it kind of seeps into them. When I say it at graduation, the whole class usually says it with me. This is it. This is what it's about. You matter, what you do matters, What you say matters, so make it count. Think about it, be intentional, make it count. That's how we start every single day. We have a very significant social emotional curriculum. That's a part of the Kahila time that they have every morning, where they are learning skills. They are actually learning about compassion and empathy and perspective taking. And we're doing it with Jewish values integrated in. And I've always said, if you look at a school schedule, you should be able to identify some of those schools' values. And I think it says something that every single student begins their day in a place of social emotional learning, because that is actually what is most important. And we use research-based curriculum as a starting point, and then we weave in the Jewish perspective as well. Our students participate in social action projects across the grades. There is always time for that teachable moment. Our teachers know that they don't only have permission, they are encouraged to stop their content teaching and use that teachable moment if there is something happening that is about developing our students' character. I want to just put this up here because I think it's really important to note, and clearly, as it shows here, there is research that shows the importance of what are considered soft skills. And these are just some of the skills that we are working on in our social emotional programming and throughout the day. Because if they're going to be successful in life when they leave us, if they're if they've mastered the content, but they don't have these skills, they are not going to be able to thrive in high school, in college, and in beyond. So this is a really important focus of who we are and what we do. I'm happy to answer questions again. I could talk about this for another hour, but I'm going to keep us moving so we can get to the next part as well. We have a lot of opportunities for our students outside of academics. We have specials, we have activities that they can participate in after school, such as band and musical and athletics. Our kids have PE 4 days a week in the morning, mostly in the morning, because there is so much research around the importance of movement. There is an impact on concentration, on cognitive abilities, on emotional regulation. There's just so many benefits. So all of our students have PE and recess. A lot of middle schools have done away with recess. All of our kids get the opportunity to move, to play. They absolutely need that. And on Friday, instead of PE, it's an extra recess. So they still have that movement. Here are some pre-COVID pictures that I just thought I would share with you about some of those extracurricular activities that our students participate in. Our school's musical is just remarkable. I'm not even really sure what to say about it. It's really tremendous. It does not feel like an elementary school or middle school musical. These are some of the pictures, and I will share that this year's musical is Frozen. We do expect to put the musical on in person this year, and we hope that you will join us for that. That is for 5th through 8th grade students. Students can be in the cast, students can be on the crew, students can be in the band. It's really a remarkable experience and just one of the wonderful opportunities that students can shine outside of academics. We also have a lot of experiential education opportunities, which of course with COVID did not happen last year. We are definitely hoping that many of these will happen in the second half of the year. Our 6th graders participate in a week-long outdoor edge program. Our 7th graders go to Washington. Our 8th graders go to Israel. These are just remarkable experiences for our students. We have been open during COVID. We have been open through all of it. We were remote in the spring of 2020, and last year we were in person. I'm not going to go into great detail about school and COVID. I will say that we are guided by these 3 principles: physical health and safety, emotional well-being, and exemplary education, as we are always guided. We have taken many steps to make sure we are protecting our community. I'm not going to go into details on this. If you have questions, I'm happy to explain them. Hopefully by the time your kids are joining us, this is no longer relevant, so I'm going to go through quickly. One final thing that I want to share is our commitment to affordability. This is something that's also really important to me because there is a misconception that I can't go to Schechter because I can't afford it, or I'll never qualify for any type of tuition support, so I'm not even going to look at it. And I want to explain that what we actually have is called flexible tuition. And what that means is that each family receives a unique tuition rate based on their unique circumstance. So there is a cost of education, but only 25% of our students pay the full cost of education, which is, so to speak, the price tag, full tuition, if you will. Only 25% of our students pay that full price tag. 75% of our students participate in our flexible tuition program. Now, that's a huge range. It might be that a family just needs a few $1,000s to help, and it might be that a family needs a lot more than that. But we are very committed to supporting families who want to be a part of our school and our community and our mission. And we actually raise and provide about $4 million a year through our flexible tuition program. Our tremendous development team works very hard every year, and we also have some endowment funds and some grant funds so that we can have a commitment to have affordability, a commitment to affordability. So if the price tag is something that scared you off, please don't let it. Please still talk to us, because we really are committed to making Schechter as affordable as we possibly can. One final statement is just that Schechter is not just for your kids. It really is for your whole family. This has been a loss for us during COVID. We have not been able to get together the way we like to, but we've done some social action opportunities. We are hoping once COVID passes, we are going to be able to get together for Hanukkah parties and a Sukkot party. And we have a party at the JCC on a Saturday night where the parents gather and the kids have fun. We offer adult education. I'm actually teaching a class next week. So look out for information about that. But we really do pride ourselves on being more than a school just for your children. With that, before we do questions, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to introduce our first parent who's going to be speaking. And I'm so thankful to both of our parents who were willing to give some of their time to us. Debbie Marks is a Schechter alum, and she currently has 3 children at Schechter. And Debbie's going to talk a little bit about her experience at Schechter and her why Schechter and what it's meant for her family. So Debbie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lena. I'm so glad that you invited me to be a part of this. And thanks for all being here to join us. I'm Debbie, and I'm an alum. I went to Schechter from kindergarten through 8th grade. And there was no doubt in my mind when I was done with Schechter, before I ever had my own children, that wherever I was in the world, I would have to move back to Chicago, not to go to any Schechter, but to go to this Salman Schechter, because I'd had such a positive experience. And it was a gift that I wanted to make sure I could give my children. My parents always told me that they sent me to Schechter because they knew that Schechter would give me an education that they weren't able to provide me. And they were right. And even for myself, going through Salman Schechter and going through Jewish high school as well, I still felt like I needed support. I needed school. I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't teach my children Hebrew language and about, Tanakh and all different aspects to Jewish life. There was so much. And I wanted them to have that community that raised me, that is still a part of our Schechter community now. Even thinking back to the friends that I made at Schechter, who are still, my friends from kindergarten are still my closest friends. We still look to each other and are there for each other. Even the friends that we don't talk to for years, we're always there supporting each other. If someone passes, if a parent passes, we all get together and we make sure to go to Shiva. We make sure to support our Schechter classmates, even as adults. We have a classmate who is a professional banjo player. Every time he comes to town, a group of us gets together to support him, to go to his shows. But we're all still connected, and it's something unique and really special. So I have 3 kids at Schechter: 7th grade, 5th grade, and 2nd grade. And they've all had their own unique experience at school, but it's been very positive for them. And it's been really positive for our family. So when they come home, whether it's singing Jewish songs and harmonizing in the backseat of the car, or they're leading Kiddush at our Shabbat table, even my 7-year-old who's able to read Hebrew. It's something that is really special and unique. And it's something that brings me and my family joy every day and is integrated in our lives. One thing that I think back to, and I didn't really think about what I was going to talk about tonight, but uh, something that I think back to when I was a kid going to Salman Schechter, my family was very traditional, but they never built a sukkah. That was something that we never had. And I said, I'd see it at school. We'd have a sukkah at school. And I said, when I grow up, I want a sukkah. I want my own sukkah. When I have children, that's something I want to do. And this year, given the year that we had with COVID, I was like, do I really want to try and figure out how I'm going to put this sukkah up? And my kids came home from school and they're like, Sukkot is coming. Where is our sukkah? And I didn't even have a sukkah yet. And they started making all the decorations. They were ready to go. And that was one way that it was like, even if I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to think about all I have to do, my kids make sure that we have all of the traditions in our home, and that we're a part of it, that I'm a part of it, not just them. So that's been really special. As far as the past, few years, which I know have been very different for everyone living in COVID, I know that Dr. Kushner didn't want to touch upon it, but I actually think it's a big part. There's so many reasons why I came to Schechter, and then there are all these reasons why I stay, right? Like you come for the community, you come for the education, and you stay for that continued excellence, essentially. I live in Northbrook, and people move to Northbrook because of the school systems, the public school systems. And people always ask me, well, if you have such good schools, why are you sending your kid to private school? You're paying their taxes. And, COVID highlighted that when I saw that my friends in the neighborhood, their children had school maybe 2-3 times a week, and it was only for a few hours. Whereas at Schechter, within 2 days, they had a system figured out. My kids went to school every class, every hour. My child who was in kindergarten was able to go through a full day of school, engaged. And by the end of that first school year, my child, who's now in 7th grade, but she was going into 6th grade then, she said, Mom, I really feel accomplished this year. I feel like I've never learned so much. And I thought, are you joking? How's that possible? During a pandemic on Zoom. But it was amazing the way that they were able to maintain that, serious level of education, and that I didn't feel like I was home teaching, not even for a second. I didn't have to be responsible for my children's education. The school was, and that meant the world to me. But another thing that's really important that I'd want to highlight is the community. Even through the time when we weren't at school, when we are at school, when it's, not times of COVID, and we're able to get together, we have Schechter Shabbats where families are brought together, they're matched together, families that don't even know each other, to share Shabbat and have a meal together, which is one of the beautiful ways that community is created. But even through a time when we're all stuck in our houses, there were all these little things that Schechter did to keep us connected. One of them, many people might not know that Dr. Kushner is our fearless leader, but she's also an expert in mindfulness and meditation. And she led our community every morning on COVID before our kids went to school. Anyone who wanted, you could be, teachers would come, parents would come, some children would come in a mindful meditation practice for 10 minutes before your day started. And at that time, that's something we all needed. I would do it from bed. She doesn't know this because I kept my camera off, but I would sit up in bed. I'd tell my kids it's time to start school, get ready. And then I'd turn on my screen and I would meditate right there, just to help let go of all the tension that we were all holding. So I was so grateful for that. Yeah, I am happy to answer any questions that anyone has, if people want to reach out to me. I'm so glad that I'm part of this community and that my children can be. I'm just so grateful.
Debbie, thank you so much. And I'm so glad to know that I knew you were on those meditations. I did not know you were in bed, but that was an important way for us to try to take care of the community. I'm going to have Debbie hang tight because we're not going to do questions just yet. I want you to hear from Kyle first, and then we'll do questions. So Debbie, if you want to turn off your camera, you can. And I'd like to introduce Kyle Stone, who came to us very differently. Kyle was new to the Schechter community last year as a result of COVID and what was happening locally. And we are so fortunate now to have his two fabulous children in kindergarten and first grade. And I'm going to turn it over to Kyle.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kushner. It really is an honor and pleasure. As you had mentioned, perhaps an inverse of Debbie's experience, I and my family, and more importantly, my wife and my two children, we arrived to Schechter because of the pandemic. We are a proud product of public schools. We plan to enroll in our children. Our oldest in kindergarten last summer. It wasn't until our local community here in Deerfield decided that they weren't going to offer an in-person option last July that we decided to look into this. And it wasn't merely because Schechter offered this an in-school option. It was the way they offered the option. It was thoughtful, it was deliberate, it was responsible, it was reasonable. And there was this intent to balance the safety of the community and the children while also meeting their developmental needs. And it was something we appreciated a great deal. It was, dare I say, mature and sober. The analogy that I always used to think about was the public schools at that time was kind of like a leaf blowing uncontrollably in the wind. It was aimless, directionless, rudderless, no leadership. Whereas Schechter had a plan. They were like this sturdy ship in these choppy waters that was still sailing right through it. And it was flexible, it was adaptable. And again, it wasn't just because they offered the in-person option, but the way in which they handled it was so enlightening and refreshing, and what was frankly a really stressful time for all of us. In my case, we had a rising kindergartner who really needed to be in school, and we were so impressed with last year. It was genuinely a triumph. And even though I and my family don't have this long history with Schechter, we'd heard and certainly would second this notion that it really was their finest hour, and we hold this debt of gratitude. That being said, we were kind of dipping our foot in the Schechter waters just to see how we would like it. We quickly had another child, our youngest, right on the heels of the first, who is now in kindergarten. Our oldest is a first grader. It was so obvious to us early on that we were taken with the culture, with the curricula, and with the community. And I want to quickly talk about community and the Jewish identity component. Both our children and their parents, and my wife and I, we have made the most wonderful friends through Schechter. And it's odd because we're pretty affable people. We have fairly good networks and whatnot. And yet it's bewildering to me how it is that both of our children and both of us have created this community of parents and kids so quickly, even during the pandemic year. And the only way I would try to explain it is obviously shared values, but it's more than that. There's a buy-in component to it. And I don't mean that literally, I mean it figuratively. We all have pride in the commitment that we've collectively made to this community, to this school, and what it means to be in the school. And I think that creates these bonds that are frankly stronger than your average classmate, stronger than your average parents of your children's classmates. And that's been real meaningful to us. The second component is the Jewish identity. I did not have a formal, immersive, intensive Jewish education. And I came at this experience with some semblance of intimidation, maybe even trepidation, just because I wasn't sure my kids, who certainly weren't familiar with seeing me in a kippah, would fit in, and whether or not they would take to it, whether or not I and my wife would take to it. Boy, have we been pleasantly surprised. To offer the sort of education that I never got to my children is something I take boastful pride in, and my wife as well. And to see the kids come home every day and have this palpable sense of pride in their Jewishness and their heritage, in the connection to the Jewish values, to becoming a better human, it's intoxicating in the best of ways. I remember during the Jewish holidays, it was maybe a month into school last year, when the kids were participating in ways that they hadn't before. Obviously, they're still only 5 and 7, and last year a year younger than that. But it was pretty neat. And my wife and I and our family, we were also kind of picking up our game. And I turned to Lauren, my wife, and I said, you know, we can't deprive the kids of this next year. And she smiled and she said, of course. It wasn't even a conversation that we were going to commit. It was just a reality. So I take a lot of pride in being on this call, being asked to be here, and really being a Schechter parent. And I'm hopeful that others can join.
Kyle, thank you so much. I'm so appreciative. I'm going to invite Debbie to come back on, turn your camera on, and I'm also going to invite Hillary Dunn to turn her camera on. Hillary is our Director of Enrollment and Admissions. Some of you may have already spoken with Hillary. If you haven't, you would definitely will speak with Hillary, and she'll say a few words at the end. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transition over and look at some of the questions that have been asked. And feel free, Kyle, Debbie, Hillary, to jump in, add whatever you think. I'll kind of give my initial answer, and then I'll pause to see what you might have to offer as well. So the first question, Kyle, I actually think you just addressed it to some degree, but if you have something else to add as well, feel free. And it says, my family's not religious, and my husband and I didn't go to day school or have much formal Jewish education. Can you talk about the families at Schechter? Will there be families like mine? So I spoke a little bit about this, and I think Kyle spoke to that too. And I'll just reinforce that no matter what your family looks like Jewishly, I can tell you, yes, there will be families like yours, because we really do have the full range. And what I'll also add is that it doesn't mean you have to, stick with families that are just like yours Jewishly, right? Friendships, I think, expand beyond, right? So there may be students whose families don't have a religious background, but those kids become close with some of the kids who identify as modern Orthodox, right? We're all in it together, but I do think this is a common question. And Kyle, you spoke to it in terms of your concerns joining the community. And I really do think that the overarching feedback we get is that people do feel welcome and a part of the community. But I want to see if anyone has anything else to add before I go to the next question.
Yeah, Lena or Dr. Kushner, I'll just say quickly, one of the marvels of the experience has been that Jack and Sam, our kids, have made friends with more religious kids. And it's kind of allowed us an opportunity to immerse ourselves in something a little different. By that same token, I had two basic concerns about fitting in. A, we weren't religious enough, or B, perhaps socioeconomically, it would be a certain strata or class of people that maybe we wouldn't feel at home with. Boy, is that not the case. Everyone truly, again, it's kind of like a secret handshake. If you're part of the community, you're part of it. You've made that decision to support the community. That's your ticket in.
Great, thank you. And you can call me Lena. There are no kids around.
I know.
Hillary or Debbie, do you have anything to add before I jump to the next question?
No, just that's the beauty of our school is the diversity. And yeah, definitely with socioeconomic status, knowing that so many people come from different backgrounds, I think that's a huge plus for me and one of the draws.
And I would just chime in that there's so many different reasons why families choose Schechter, right? So some families, as Lena mentioned early on, are choosing it for the Hebrew language. Some families are choosing it for just the smaller more nurturing environment, the teacher-student relationship. So there's a wide range in terms of why families choose Schechter and then why families continue to stay.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to jump, there's kind of a collection of questions around tuition. So I addressed some of them, but there are a couple of questions here that I want to address. There's a question about the income ranges and the amounts of award. How can you assure me that my family will continue to get support once we begin Schechter? So I want to speak to the process, and Hillary, you may have something to add. I'm not sure, you'll see. We really work with every individual family, and we look at the entirety of your family's financial situation. So if you're paying for Jewish preschool, if you're paying for Jewish high school, if you have other expenses in your life, we look at that in its entirety. And we make a decision in terms of award. We actually work with a third party first that makes the initial determination. And then if you have extenuating circumstances, you call the school and you appeal the award, and we work with you. We actually spend hours with our families to really go back and forth and to talk about it. We really work to make sure that there is not a high percentage of AGI. Most families are not paying more than 10 or 12% of AGI. Some are paying less than that, but we really look at the full context. And in terms of the question of how can you assure me you will continue to provide support? This is not a bait and switch situation. We're not going to give assistance for your first year in, and then the next year say, well, now you need to pay us, twice as much. Whatever your rate is when you come in, we're going to work with you in a reasonable way. So we're going to see, right, if your income goes up the next year, we're going to see if your payment can go up the next year, but it's not going to be something that is drastic. Once you are a part of the community, we are committed to working with you and committed to doing everything that we can. Oh, we've got Kyle twice. Oh, I think we lost Kyle the first time. Okay. So we're very committed to that process. Hill, do you have anything you want to add?
I would just add that it's a confidential process. So this isn't something that there's a very small select group of individuals that participate on the tuition committee. And beyond that, the information is not shared. So nobody knows anybody else's circumstances. It's not something that it's discussed. It's not something that's shared. It's just, as Kyle said, once you're here, you're here.
Thank you. So I'm going to go on to the next question. There's questions just about competitive nature with public school, right? Concern with 2 languages. Will my kids have enough instruction in English and math and science and social studies? How do you fit it all in and stay competitive compared to the public schools? So I'll speak to this, and then anyone else who wants to jump in. I talked a little bit about how we really make the most of our time. So because we have additional faculty available to us, we are able to provide smaller group instruction in some of those key areas. And one of the other points that I touched upon, but I think is worth mentioning again, is the fact that kids are working on similar skills across the content areas, right? So I've often heard in 7th and 8th grade, the types of discussions they're having in Bible are very similar to the types of conversations they're having in language arts, right? They're doing literary analysis. We actually had an alum come back who went to public high school, and she said, you know which class really prepared me for my freshman English arts, language arts class? My Bible class. She said all of the work we did in diving into the text and asking questions paralleled what happened in language arts. And something similar has been said about the rabbinics class and the science class, right? That inquiry, that questioning is something that they're getting across content areas. So we are very confident that kids are getting what they need. And as I said, we also measure ourselves against state national standards to make sure that our kids are measuring up and getting everything that they need. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add. Okay. Similar question, high school preparedness. Will my kids be ready for high school, especially if they attend a public high school? We consistently hear from our alumni that they are ready and prepared wherever they are going to high school, that they are thriving. We actually had an alum come back and speak with our 8th grade language arts teacher and say, I'm a little bored because what we're doing is stuff that we did in 7th and 8th grade. Like I'm ready for more. We have connections with, obviously with Rochelle Zell. We have a strong relationship with Rochelle Zell and some of the other local public schools where we know teachers who are there who say that they can identify Schechter kids. They can think critically. They advocate for themselves. They are ready to engage. They're also used to a robust dual curriculum. So if they go onto Rochelle Zell, they're ready for the robust dual curriculum there. And if they're going onto a public high school, they're actually used to juggling twice as many classes as they're going to have in a public high school. So they know how to manage their time, and they know how to engage with their classmates. And they are ready. I will say that the jump from Schechter to a large public high school can be a jolt for some kids just in terms of the size. It's just different. It's just a different experience. So our kids, we do prepare our kids. We speak with our 8th graders. It's something we're actually talking about how we can do even a better job to prepare them for what it means to transition from what really feels like their second home, right? They're in this warm, nurturing space at Schechter, and it's relatively small, to go to a large school. What's going to be different? How can you navigate some of those challenges if you have them? If you don't have anyone to sit with at lunch, what can you do? All of those different pieces of making a transition to a large school. But the short answer is we hear from our kids that they do tremendously well.
And I'll just chime in, another piece that we hear from teachers also at some of the public high schools is they can spot the Schechter students because they're the ones who are the most at ease advocating for themselves. Our students are so used to having the teacher-student relationship be of one where the student just expects that the teacher is invested in their growth and their development. So of course, I'm going to enter into a high school scenario and my teacher wants me to succeed and wants me to understand. So I'm going to feel confident and comfortable advocating for myself and reaching out to my teachers, which I think is something interesting to watch.
Great. Okay, a couple more questions and then we'll close out for the evening. I know we're at 8:03, but there's just a couple questions left and I want to make sure we can answer them. So there's a question about if we can share our average MAP scores. I don't have them offhand. I'm happy when you come in for tours to be able to share some information about where we are. We typically we don't have a chart that we just hand out to everybody, but it's not a secret. Our kids do very well. I will say that with COVID, everyone is seeing a little bit of a slide on some of the tests, but we are still very pleased. Our kids are actually in the middle of MAP testing right now. So that's happening. We like the kids to be able to get through the beginning of the year, get through the holidays, and then do the MAP testing. We do the MAP testing in the fall and in the spring. So the fall MAP testing helps us inform instruction to say, okay, where are our kids and what do they need? By the way, it's a snapshot. We will never make any significant educational decisions based solely on a standardized test. It is one snapshot of a child, and we use lots of different metrics, and we look at classroom performance and pre-assessments, but it is one snapshot that we use. And then we take the test again in the spring so we can measure growth. Did students grow across the different content areas? So if you want more information about that, you'll talk to Hillary and I when you come visit the school. There's a question about the AGI range in terms of does that account for multiple children or just one child? So that's a really important question as well. We look at your entire family and what you can afford as a family. So if you come in and you're paying a particular rate for one child, we're not going to just double that when your next child comes in, because we understand what the capacity is for you to be able to pay for your family. So we are considering multiple children. Hillary, I don't know if you want to add anything to that process. Okay. So before Hillary talks about next steps, Debbie and Kyle, any final words that we didn't get to, or are you good? Wonderful. I want to just thank you both so much for your time. I want to thank everyone who attended this evening. I hope I get to meet everyone in person if I haven't met you already. And Hillary, why don't you talk a little bit about next steps for our prospective families?
Well, I will be very brief because I know the hour is late. Really, the next steps are just reach out. Reach out. You have our contact information. We want to meet you. We want to hear your story. We want to get to know your family, your children. Like we said, everybody has a bit of a different story. So we want to get to know you, whether that is by coming in for a tour, an in-person tour. We also do something we call admissions conversations, which is just doing something similar to this, but a few less people at the table, just Lena, myself, and you, and we can go from there. So we look forward to getting to know you and to getting to know your family.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Debbie and Kyle. I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful evening. Be well. Hope to see you all soon.